Hey guys, welcome back. This is the Co-Travel with Bob Piercy podcast. I'm very excited today. I have Mark Tholen on the call. Mark, thank you for doing this.
You're absolutely welcome, Bob. Good to see you again.
Absolutely. And I should say Dr. Mark Tholen, just for people that haven't had a chance to meet you or know the name. But Mark, so I went for a second before the call and I just printed off your bio off the website. So I'm just taking a quick read of this. So it says here, Dr. Mark Tholen is the former CEO of the nation's premier dental office design firm, which has created over 3,000 offices in a variety of, in virtually every state, state of the union, Europe, and Australia. His career in dentistry spans over 30 years, including clinical practice before obtaining his MBA at the University of Texas. He is the author of 3 dental textbooks published by Leah Fibiger. The most recent, which is a comprehensive book on all aspects of the dental office design, which has over 7,500 copies sold. Dr. Mark Tholen has lectured extensively in the US, Europe, Australia, and Asia, and is a former consulting editor for the parent corporation of Dental Economics. Currently, he is the principal instructor of the extremely popular dental office design seminar, Inspiring Success, sponsored by A-DEC of Newburgh, Oregon. And you also have talked in Canada. We've discussed this many times. So you've been across coast to coast in Canada lecturing as well, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. All the way from Halifax to Vancouver Island. So I pretty much covered geography.
You know what? I'm ashamed to say this. I have not made it to Halifax yet. I've been born and raised in Canada. So you've seen more of my country than I have. So good on you.
Yeah.
So, hey, real quick, Mark, we are, and for people that have listened to this podcast before, they've heard me say this and it's true, but we are 14 months into this whole COVID-19 pandemic. I'm looking forward to the day when we can stop referring to this and get on to just life as general without talking about it. But what has these past 14 months been like for you, your design firm? And I should say it is THE Design, so Tholen Healthcare Environments Design.
Yes.
What is this personally, professionally, what does this past 14 months look like for you?
Well, I'm sure, as with everyone else, when this first happened, it was a real kick in the pants financially and to some degree emotionally. And with all the uncertainty that surrounded the virus and all the unknowns. As time went by, I recognized that as long as I washed my hands, I wore a mask, and I didn't touch my face, I was going to be okay.
Yeah. And
along with anybody else who would follow those simple rules. And indeed, that has happened. But what we found with our firm was something that was very, very unusual, and we really didn't think was going to happen. Instead of having a paucity of business, why we've had an embarrassment of riches, because people with or doctors with resources, that is to say, money or the accessibility to money, recognized that this was a wonderful time to do something, because there were so few other people doing things at that moment. And so we actually had something of a surge in clients coming in for office design. And some of our biggest, nicest offices we've ever designed have been designed during this period. And now we're experiencing once again a plethora of clients. But I'll say this: increasingly now there is a real challenge for supplies. Lumber is in short supply. Various metals are increasingly in short supply, and therefore prices of the overall office are going up because material costs are going up. So there's a little bit of brakes being put on things simply because you can't obtain certain materials right now. So everything has to be very carefully planned and orchestrated in terms of acquisition of material, as well as securing all the subcontractors, all the labor required for projects these days.
And we're seeing the exact same thing here in Canada. I was actually talking to another Team Shine employee the other day, and he's getting some personal work done at his house, and he's getting some concrete jacked up and some cracks filled. And the quote came back and is astronomical. And he asked the guy, and the guy said, it's the market. And I've got no idea as to whether really those materials and those, are really truly being affected, or if it's just every contractor under the sun taking advantage because, like you say, lumber and metals have been so highly affected that it seems like almost every other trade is taking that opportunity to add on 15, 20, 50% in regards to cost of projects. But definitely a concern with COVID. And then on the supply side too, I got an email before the end of last year saying that all the major manufacturers of latex and nitrile gloves were increasing their capacity, but it was going to take almost all of 2021 to bring those factories online. So those companies weren't going to be able to increase the supply of gloves until the Q4 of 2021. So again,
Right.
just going to extend the delay for access to these goods. I'm curious, going back, you are in Texas, and did you graduate dental school in Texas?
Yes. Yep. University of Texas Dental School at San Antonio.
And I'm not going to ask the year. You can share that if you wish. But I'm curious, what took you from being a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed dental grad to going down the path of designing over 3,000 dental practices?
Yeah. I just wish I knew then what I know now. That would have made the journey much smoother, and it would have made it much more pleasant. And so, there's a saying that experience is a very, very hard teacher, because you take the test first and then you learn the lesson. And I think that kind of characterized my life, and I've learned so many lessons by watching the mistakes of others, and having the opportunity to do thousands and thousands of offices. So when we do that many offices, we learn about all of the mistakes, and therefore we can pass along our knowledge to our clients so that they don't make the same mistakes that others have made before them. And so hopefully, at this point, the experience ends up being mistake-free.
Mm-hmm.
When we're holding the hand of a client moving through the process. And so, if I could talk to my young self, I would say you always want to have a group of people around you who have done this over and over and over again. Same as if you were having some kind of medical procedure, let's just say heart surgery. I want a heart surgeon who does exactly what I need to have done. And I want them to do it every day, all day. And I want them to have seen every error and mistake and complication. And so I can glide through the process with minimal stress.
And so you, as a young dentist, you obviously, was it when you bought your first practice? Was it when you were an associate, you saw these errors? And again, what made you go so far to actually, again, create the THE design company?
Sure. What happened was I decided to try and learn more about finance, because I was being somewhat successful in practice. I finally, for the first time in my life, I had money, and but people were coming to me with opportunities, and I didn't know when they were blowing smoke or when they were valid financial opportunities. And so I decided I needed more information, and the only way I knew to get it was more education. So I went back to the University of Texas, worked for several years while I was still in practice, and obtained an MBA from the University of Texas. So it's a very, very, what I call serious academic effort to do that. And when I completed it, I was approached, because that was in Austin, and in Austin, Texas. And the design firm that I met at that point found out that I was a dentist. I was in practice. I was now an MBA graduate. And they said, my gosh, we really need a person like this working with our firm, because we specialize in medical and dental office design. And so I ended up working with them, and then I ended up leaving practice and actually running the company as the CEO for a number of years, and that became very, very exciting and interesting to me, and it became very challenging. We think of dentistry as extremely complex, as extremely labor intensive, and very, very procedurally intensive. And it is. But architecture makes that look like child's play. I mean, the number of details required to be retained by the architect in their mind while they're designing the facility is absolutely astounding. It really gives me pause and awe about the human brain and what it's capable of doing. So, we transitioned from being the CEO, and I had left the firm, at one point in about 2009, and then I started lecturing for Pelton Crain as a dental office design consultant, and I would lecture to doctors, and I think that's where you and I met originally.
Yeah, it was 2000. I was hired in September 2009. It was probably 2010. I came down to my first. It was Driven to Excellence, I believe, was the name of the course.
Yes.
And I came down with a young doctor, his wife, and I think it was a 2-week-old baby at the time.
Yes.
And
yes, I remember this poor little baby. Yes.
And the baby was a rock star. Like sat there and was and I'm now a father. I've got two. I've got a 3-month-old is my youngest right now, and a 2.5-year-old. And now I've learned a little bit more about kids, but thankfully, like at 2 weeks old, babies are generally pretty quiet. And and so, but I remember it was also we had to like get this kid a passport, so we had to have this, and so it was a whole rigmarole because the due date, all this stuff was kind of culminating on like the time of this trip. So, but yeah, it was a great experience, and I learned a lot, absolutely, and it was also it was a great experience for the course, but the trip itself was amazing in regards to the experience for the doctor, for us with the doctor, just to get to know everyone better. Portland's an amazing place. I've been there a few times since, and I really like Portland. But again, it was just again overall fantastic experience. I want to come back to the course, but I'm just curious, like in the span of your career designing dental practices, like I can think of kind of like 2-3 major changes in dental office design, but I'm kind of curious to hear what your thoughts are on like the evolution of designing dental offices in regards to where it's been and kind of where it's going now, and especially where it's going kind of in a post-COVID world.
Sure. I think that the dental, I guess what you would call it, design industry, which is actually very, very small select group of firms. They have different ways of approaching design, and I would say, having been a practicing dentist, the two things that I focus on when we design an office, and seems to be relatively unique compared to other firms, is that number one, I want a great return on investment, because I'm in practice not for fun. I'm in practice to earn money. And yes, it's very interesting to me. Yes, I am a clinician, but I need to keep the doors open, and I want to be able to provide for my family and my future. So return on investment's a big deal. So another way of putting that is I want high productivity, and or let's put it this way, optimal productivity. And at the same time, I recognized by being in practice how physically stressful the practice of dentistry is. So I wanted to minimize the physical stress and the emotional stress for the staff during the day. So I want the day to move smoothly. I want to be in control of the clock throughout the day. And so that translates into minimizing the emotional and physical stress. So we focus on optimization of productivity and the minimization of stress in our designs. And I think that's relatively unique. I think some other some other organizations within the industry will concentrate on the wow factor. And that's great. I think the wow factor is very important, but I don't think you do that to the exclusion of recognizing the need for optimal productivity and in managing the stress issue also inside the office. And the other thing that I think that is certainly being focused on, but sometimes it's a hyper focus, and that is technology. Now, I want technology to augment and facilitate the practice of dentistry. I don't want it to dominate the practice of dentistry and then have the technology dictating how I actually deliver the care. So I want to be able to create offices that incorporate technology, and they can bring new technologies heretofore unknown and not even conceived of, but we want to have the plasticity or the flexibility in an office to be able to layer in those technologies as time goes by. And I think that a number of firms are very technically oriented, but they're technically oriented to today's technology. And not having been in practice themselves, they have a difficulty in being able to foresee how to create those spatial environments that allow for the addition of new technology.
It's an interesting thing just saying that, because custom made, custom fit, design, whatever it is, looks amazing and it looks good, but you say it looks good right now. Like you say, I can think of a few examples where, the Gen 2 or the Gen 3 of a particular product is, for whatever reason, it's bigger, it's smaller. And if you're so focused on design that is aesthetic in regards to how something would fit in a space, well, that's great. But if you're going to upgrade, again, whether it's a mill or a cavitron or anything else down there, if it doesn't fit that space anymore, now that's a wasted space, and it becomes bad design.
Right.
And I had another designer, a local designer on earlier on, and she said something, and she quoted somebody. I forget what the gentleman's name was, but basically, and I'm summarizing, it was, bad design is invisible until it fails.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty close to what the quote was. And again, just what you said there, I think lines up very well with that mindset in regards to what it goes into to a space. Now, I don't know what's happened in Texas, again, kind of post-COVID, and what's happened across Canada has varied almost province to province in regards to how provinces have addressed COVID. Some provinces have been very, very strict, and they've actually required offices to completely isolate operatories. So some offices that had center island and rear cabinet open concept designs have had to actually temporarily, they've hung poly to divide operatories and had slats and poly sheets to kind of, again, isolate operatories, because they were concerned about aerosol and micro bubbles floating amongst open concepts. In Alberta, they have not required that. They've just required higher use of high volume during aerosol generating procedures, so high speeds or cavitrons to again capture. And there's been studies showing that high volume with these devices can capture 95, 98% of aerosols generated. Has anything like that been put in place in Texas or across the states that you know of? And I'm wondering, in the future, are we going to be going away from open concept designs to more closed concepts as our awareness of aerosols increases, but also not just for medical reasons and protection reasons, but also for, say, patient information reasons and privacy reasons? Do you see that as a shift?
I'm going to answer that in kind of a twofold answer.
There was a lot in that question.
Answer.
So answer it in as many segments as you need.
Sure. First of all, I'm just going to make a general comment about the reactions that we've seen in states and provinces with regard to physical barriers that you've just described, and that is that I'm afraid lawyers and politicians are driving medical policy.
Right.
And that's very unfortunate, because it results in extra expense for the private practitioner, and it doesn't do anything to protect the staff or the patient. So that's just kind of a blanket statement. Now I'm going to leave that alone, and I'm just going to go to our investigations as to what we have found that is effective. And we've engaged a number of engineers as well as microbiologists to come up with kind of a solution. And the solution, in very broad terms, Bob, is it's not about physical barriers, it's about airflow. It's about airflow and it's about air filtration. And I don't want to get in the weeds. I'm just going to say that in Boston at the Tufts School of Medicine hospital, when the coronavirus hit, they isolated every coronavirus patient in hastily made ICU, individual ICU units. And so everybody was in their own, what I call box. Mm-hmm. And they also had a very strict protocol of how the caregivers were to enter the room and exit the room, and what type of protective gear they would be wearing in and out of those rooms. And they even had airlocks between the room and the hallway. The virus still was in the hallway.
Really?
And yes, and the virus was in the hallway because it's coming through the ventilation system.
Yeah.
Okay. So there has to be a very specific airflow, and there has to be a very specific filtration. The good news, if somebody really wants to hear about this, is I have done a webinar on Henry Schein Dental, and it's available for people to view. It's about a 45-minute program, and it discusses how to design the airflow and the filtration systems in a dental office. Once that's done, it doesn't matter if there are physical barriers. Okay, the virus is the virus is floating in the air. And it's in contained spaces, and it's being recirculated. And that's why people who were staying in apartments in New York City and not going out at all were ending up with the virus.
Right.
Okay. You know, I mean, this is how it was happening. And so I'm going to say one way to deal with this is an air filtration system. So when you're doing a new office or you're remodeling your office, at least consider upgrading the filtration system to meet the parameters that I enumerate. And there are about 5 elements that I enumerate in the webinar on the Henry Schein webinar website. The other thing I'm going to say is there's a trifecta of clinical treatment modalities that I would highly recommend. One is, and it's all designed to minimize aerosol. One is a laser handpiece for hard tissue reduction. In other words, if you're cutting a cavity prep, you know, this is how we're going to do it. And we're going to be using a laser, and I'm going to suggest the one that I like the best is the Solea laser. And because it has very minimal aerosol and is extremely efficient in its cutting abilities. And the other thing that I'm going to suggest for hygiene is a piezoelectric scaler, or a piezo ceramic ultrasonic scaler. And it uses very little water, because the water from just a mechanical engineering standpoint, the water goes to the end of the tip before it's dispersed. And many times the tip of the instrument is subgingival, or below the gum line.
Right.
And so there is no aerosol there's just a water coming out of the gingival sulcus. So those are two huge elements that really help in reducing the amount of aerosol in the operatory, and that helps the staff, and it helps the patients. And then the last thing, well, the third element to this is the airflow system in the office and the filtration. If you do those three things, I'm going to say you're reducing the probability of having any virus or bacteria floating around your office, and I think everybody's going to end up being a lot healthier.
It was on the news just a week or so ago, but basically a structural engineer talking about HVAC systems in buildings and just saying how that's kind of been like the redheaded stepchild in regards to design for all industries that just really has been neglected over years, and they're expecting to see changes in that area just in the future, just because of what we're experiencing now. I was on another podcast a while ago, and we were talking about there's that old video, I'm sure you've seen it, If Saliva Were Red. Yes. It was shot back in the 70s or 80s. Sure. And again, just the end of the video just showing, the splatter and the mess that, where everything gets. And again, but because saliva is clear, it's out of sight, out of mind, literally. And again, it's just something we haven't been aware of, haven't been tracking, and now it's become forefront. So,
right.
So in regards to, just hearing what you're saying though, like you're with taking those kind of three steps, and it's interesting. Sorry, Solea Laser. I'm actually talking to have them on the podcast in the future. I'm very excited about that. I think that's very, very cool. And so piezo, you're saying piezo over Cavitron in regards to scaling ultrasonics, and then again air filtration. That being said, that's going to take care of the vast majority of aerosols, and you're saying basically treat it, capture it in the mouth, prevent it from getting out there. So there should be no concern in regards to open concept operatories, because you're preventing the issue again at the source, which is the patient's mouth, which I think is great, because I agree with everything you said earlier about how, whenever government and legal tends to get involved, they always seem to approach things, and this is just my opinion, but like more is always better. And so it's more regulation, more red tape, more, and
that's their business. That's their job.
It is. And yeah, absolutely. And again, they're not taking into consideration they're taking into the consideration of the perception of, what's better, but they're not taking into consideration what's actually better for the patient or the customer, or what's actually better for the business owner, or in our case, the dentist. They're just trying to, again, do more.
Well, you know what, Bob, if I can just interrupt you, please, I'm going to use an example of that. Governments say, oh, you must wear a mask. Well, you know what? The only mask that is effective is an N95 mask. Yep. That mask will prevent the particle size of the coronavirus from coming through the material in the mask and then coming into your respiratory system. That's the only one.
And around the mask too, because a surgical mask doesn't seal properly. So, So interesting. I just had a talk with my hygienist earlier this week, and other PPE requirements they've put in here locally is they want providers wearing shields as well as glasses, and 95 masks, like you say, is one of it, and then also gowning. And it's funny, like she's happy with the gown now. Before, when she first put it on, it was hot, it was clumsy, but now she likes it. And she actually prefers the N95 respirator over the level 3 surgical mask now. And so, again, it's better protection for her. She's finding it more comfortable. And so some of these steps that are being put in place are probably, and we're probably the right steps. And some of this is going to stay, but then other provinces, like the ones that have put up, have required physical barriers, hopefully we're able to, with science, show what is reasonable. And because if all of a sudden they've taken, whether it's a Pelton Crain or an A-DEC center island, and this gorgeous design and concept, and now they need to actually make it enclosed, the cost on the business is just, not reasonable for the benefit. There's, like you said, there's very little to no benefit in doing it.
Right.
It's just, again, regulation and red tape. Um, in regards to open versus closed, though, do you see any shift in that? Like, I've seen more shift to a closed operatory. People tend to like it. They like a big rear cabinet now. There is a privacy that, so they're more comfortable to talk with patients about procedures. Are you seeing that shift in the US as well, or is it still predominantly open concept?
Sure. I think that it all depends upon the architectural firm or the architect who's actually designing the facility, because what you're really referring to there, Bob, is privacy. You know, we want a closed operatory for privacy. And when you think about privacy, well, the part that I'm really interested in is the sound. You know, I don't want conversations to be overheard from one operatory to another. And so if we're really talking about sound management, the most clumsy way to do that is to enclose a space. The more elegant way to do that is to have sound abatement through the absorption of the sound in various ways, through design as well as through materials. And so when I'll just use our firm as an example. When we're designing an office, we ask the client about their desire for sound management. Do you want conversations not overheard from one operatory to another? Do you want the hand pieces to not be heard from one operatory to the other? Because all of this is possible. You know, my joke to almost every client is anything's possible with time and money.
Yes. Yeah, please.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so if you want total silence in each operatory, but yet you want an open design, it can be done. It can be done. And like I say, probably the clumsiest way to do that is to have a fully enclosed operatory. But you know, when you, I mean, psychologically, if I go into a fully enclosed operatory as the patient, what's going to happen? You know, I mean, this is, I'm thinking, is something really bad going to happen in here because they want this thing soundproofed? And, you know, am I going to be screaming or something? So for a minimization of stress, I think a dual rear entry operatory is optimal because you're not opening and closing doors. The doctor goes in one side, sits down, the assistant goes in the other side, sits down, and you're able to begin treating the patient. And rather than having a single door entry or a dual door entry, because people are going to move into and out of operatories hundreds of times a day. They are not going to open and close doors. They just
Right.
aren't. And if they do, they're going to be so worn out at the end of the day. They're just, you know, they've had it. And at some point, they're going to stop opening and closing the doors in the office. So yes, I see a trend toward closed operatories right now because of the whole virus issue. But I really believe people are going to recognize with a little bit of time that that just wasn't very interesting. Like, for example, people who have a stick shift in their car. You know, it's a lot of fun for the first 6 months. And then you think, wait a minute, I've got a lot of stuff here now that I didn't used to have. You know, I've got this thing that looks like a computer screen up here with, you know, it's a bunch of, you know, touch buttons that I have to deal with everything in my car. And then I've got my phone, and I've got all kinds of things that I didn't used to have. And so in bygone eras when the stick shifts were popular or used. And so after a while, you resent the stick shift. And if you could avoid using it, you would. And that's called selling the car and buying an automatic.
Yeah, everyone loves the stick shift and the twists and the turns, but when you're stuck in rush hour traffic and you're stop and go, no one likes to be working that clutch and shifting the gears. In regards to you going back to, you talked about like the rear entry, dual entry design. I remember back again, the first conferences that we were at with Pelton and Crain, you were also big on the rear delivery and keeping the chair completely naked, for, nothing on the chair, because you didn't
Right.
want it looking like this torture device, I think was the verbiage you used. Are you still a fan of the rear mounted delivery systems?
Absolutely, absolutely, because they are there are two things. It creates a high trust, low fear environment because the patient walks in. First couple of steps into the operatory, they move past the what I call the business end of the operatory. The delivery head that has the hand pieces on it. And then they sit down, and hopefully there's something to look at, a picture, a window that look they're looking out, and so they're distracted,
Hmm.
and so that's a high trust, low fear environment. When my joke is, if frightened patients don't buy things, you know. And so the other thing would be that the ergonomic efficiencies, the ability to deliver four-handed dentistry and really reduce your treatment time while maintaining the quality of your care is done through four-handed passes, and that's done with rear delivery. Now, I will say that you could also do that with the continental system. You can do over the patient delivery with four-handed passes with your assistant, and everybody's still in a very ergonomic position. And again, what is that position? Well, you can see that in my books or whatever, or the video series.
Right.
But but um, but the continental system will also allow the assistant and the doctor to be doing and practicing four-handed passes and driving down treatment time. And in fact, if you're using four-handed passes, you can drive down treatment time by 25%, which if you add that up during the day, why that's huge. Instead of a 9-hour clinical day or 8-hour clinical day, it becomes a 6-hour clinical day.
And you talk about ergonomics being a big thing. I was just checking online before we got on the call too, and a number of sites, and I know this. I think we've all heard this before too. Dentistry is extremely high risk in the sense it's often ranked highly in regards to dangerous jobs, in regards to exposure to, again, viruses and just a patient, but also just in regards to position and ergonomics and
Mhm.
bad position in regards to
Sure.
stress on joints. And again, most people, I don't think, realize this when they get into dentistry, but they find this out. Or most of them probably don't find out until it's too late, till they already have that bad back or bad shoulder.
Right, right. No, that's exactly right. We've done a lot of research on this, and I've been doing this conference for almost 15 years now, and we've been surveying doctors with a questionnaire, and almost 70% of the doctors who have attended the conference, which I think is pretty much a cross section of doctors in Canada and the U.S. Almost 70% of them have musculoskeletal problems so significant it's impeding their ability to just function as a person.
Mhm.
And by that I mean either in a leisure way or in a sleep at night or actually in practice. So yes, the practice of dentistry is exceedingly physical, and our objective needs to be to minimize our repetitive movement. Okay, minimization of repetitive movement is a primary goal in the ergonomics of dentistry, and so that is what that's what the design of the operatory is all about. Hopefully, that's what it's all about. It was the minimization of repetitive movement and allowing the doctor and the assistant to deliver the care very efficiently at a very high quality.
Yeah, the dentistry has to be the most important thing. The patient has to be, well, and even the dentist and the providers need to take priority over the patient, I believe, is because again, they're in that environment day in, day out. And obviously with no, again, we've met back in 2010 with Pelton Crain in Portland. I've been to the newer course in A-DEC now, again, still in Portland, Oregon, or Newburgh, I should say. But I'm assuming now with COVID, obviously we aren't traveling. Canada, our restrictions are greater than those in the US, but you have taken this course online. And the funny thing is, before, again, today we got on this call, I received an email from Henry Schein's Sidekick magazine talking about the course that you are actually doing online. Can you talk about that, and how has that experience been so far?
Sure. Absolutely. As this entire virus circumstance was visited upon us, we decided to make a real change in the way that the information of the live course has been delivered. And so we've created this entire video series. It's 13 videos. They're all about 40 to 45 minutes long, and they take the doctor from everything from what I call the core principles of design to kind of more nuanced principles for every room of the office, so that they understand what elements of design should be in every room of the office to optimize production and minimize their stress. And once we finish the whole design effort, the focus in the video series turns to: how do you finance? How do you fund this? How do you evaluate whether or not you can fund this? And so I go through a step-by-step methodology with finance and math, and show them how they actually go through the process of determining whether or not they can fund the project. And then we talk about, in the latter stages of the video series, what type of team needs to be put together, and how do they go about doing that? How does the clinician go about doing that? And what is their role in the entire design and construction process? And then finally, we end up with we wrap everything together in kind of a capstone program at the end of the course, and do some practical demonstrations of exactly how do you decide whether to design or remodel, or buy a condo, or go ahead and do a lease space. All that, and we show how do you make that decision step by step by step. So we take all the information that we've given to you throughout the entire program, we put it all together in an example, so you can see, okay, this is how I'm going to use all of these disparate pieces of information that I have learned over the last 9 hours, 10 hours.
And you said too that this course, this online, these 13 videos, is much more in depth than we were able to go in to the Newburgh and the Portland courses, just based on time. I'm going to include a link to this course in the show notes, so anyone listening who wants to check it out, by all means they can. And I'm just reading here briefly. I believe it says here too, like if you register, they get access to the first video for free before they have to pay for the remainder. But again, highly recommend it. Dr. Tholen, we're coming up on time. I don't want to kick you off. This is a great conversation, really enjoying it, but I do believe you have kind of a hard stop. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on, but kind of before we wrap this up, or is that good for you?
Yeah, I would just say that if people are interested in the video series, they can find this on Henry Schein Dental, and they would go to be very specific, dentalofficedesign.university.com, and they'll be able to register for that first free course. In addition to the course, they were also able to access a consultation time with me and with the individual representative, and then we're able to also offer the 2 books I've written. One is comprehensive review of everything that's in the course, and the second book is all about floor plans. It's 100 award-winning floor plans, and forming your future with all kinds of ideas in a variety of floor plans. And so that's a package that the doctor will receive as part of the purchase of the video series. The other thing I'm just going to suggest is if people are interested in looking at my website, they can, or if they want to send me an email, they can do that at Dr. Mark, no periods, just Dr. Mark, M-A-R-K, at mynewdentaloffice.com, at mynewdentaloffice.com. And the other thing that that I would suggest is that the two books are available on Amazon.
Okay.
Too. So Amazon.com.
I'll include that all in the show notes. And also, if you could send me the video on the webinar for the airflow,
Absolutely.
I'll include that in a link in the show notes as well. So, hey, Mark, thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate your time. I look forward to the day to get back down to Newburgh and take your course again. There's always I look forward to the same old jokes, but also I always learn something new at the same time as well. So, hey, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy your weekend, and I hope you and the family stay safe.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Okay, it's been a blast. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye for now.